Hi, and welcome to Behind the Scenes with Axiom Medical. I'm your host, Jason McWinney. I'm the brand and creative manager here at Axiom Medical. I've been with the company a little over 3 years, and I've loved every minute of it. This is our very first episode of Behind the Scenes, where we're going to take a behind-the-scenes look at the people at Axiom Medical that make the company tick. So over the next few months, you're going to be introduced to people from various walks of life and different roles within the company. For our first episode, I thought we would turn the tides a little bit and interview the interviewer. If you've seen any of our webinars over the past couple of years or heard or watched any of our podcasts over the past couple of years, you know our next guest. She is the lovely and talented Holly Foxworth, and she is our first guest. So welcome, Holly.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on this side for once. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different. You're not asking the questions. You're getting questions. So let's start off. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people?
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Holly Foxworth, and I am a registered nurse, and I'm also the marketing manager for content here at Axiom.
Great. And how long have you been with the company?
Would you believe that actually this year was my 10th year anniversary? So it's like we've made it a whole decade.
That's fantastic. I know, I'm a bit biased because I'm on the marketing team with you. And so we love having you on the team, but maybe you could kind of give everybody kind of a history of how you ended up starting out with Axiom Medical and how you came to be with us.
Absolutely. So actually, and so this may sound a little strange, but actually my Axiom career started in prison.
Well, okay. All right. Do tell.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of a story behind that. So actually, my husband was a warden before he retired. And so we lived at the prison and we had our kids there. And so I remember whenever I came like 10 years ago, the nurse, but back in those days, whenever we started, you would have a nurse that would actually come and do like an orientation at your house whenever you're a nurse case manager. And so anyways, that I remember that being the big discussion was like, oh my gosh, who are we going to send to the prison to actually go to Holly's house? So it definitely made for an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have been an interesting drive up too. So your house was actually like inside the prison, or how did that work?
It was, yeah. So at the last place that we were at, which was actually Tennessee Colony, and so that's Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And so you would actually drive to the gates, and then, anybody that came in, then obviously you had to show identification. You had to be on a list. They take the little mirrors and they go around your car and make for sure that you haven't smuggled in any dead bodies or any animals, contraband, etc. And provided that you make the cut, then you come on in. And then you would just come to our house. Yeah.
So no file shaped cakes were brought over to your house.
No, I think they would prefer that we leave the file shaped cakes out. Yeah, I will say that one time my sister and brother-in-law were there at our house when we lived at the prison. And so anyways, all of a sudden, we had like this unique group of like the work squad. And so they would take care of the grounds. And I remember Travis being so concerned. So he goes to the window and he's like, Penny, there's people that are like prisoners, but like they don't have any handcuffs on out here. And so it's just kind of a running joke, but actually they were great individuals. They did a great job. And it's actually interesting to see that side of life and to see the rehabilitation that occurs with some of these individuals that were in that squad and have since been released.
Wow. What an interesting story. Yeah. And so you started as a nurse case manager, and now describe to us your progression, how you ended up with us on the marketing team.
Okay. So actually I started, so I'll say that actually we'll bring it back to the very beginning. So I actually have been a nurse for, I guess I've going on close to 20 years now. And so I always knew that I actually wanted to be an ER nurse. Kind of always had this fascination with taking things like, break them to their full potential. And then it's like a challenge to see if we can, put them back together and somehow make them look shiny and pretty with some fairy dust on there. So I started out in the ER. I knew I always wanted to be in the ER. I took a little bit of a different route. Most people kind of start once you graduate from nursing school and go to some of the floors. But I knew knew that wasn't for me. I wanted to jump into the action right where it was at, and with the trauma and being exposed to all the different populations and also age ranges as well. And so once I did that, I stayed with the ER basically until all of a sudden I was in an ER in Rusk, and I was exposed to Axiom. And I kind of tell the story that it was a little bit unique. Whenever you are a nurse on that end, you don't always understand occupational health. That's just kind of the facts. That's the way it is. You don't always learn a lot about that in nursing school. And so I was usually probably the nurse that everybody hated, because we didn't understand that, whenever you write out these excuses, like, oh, Tommy needs to be off from work, or, hey, let's go ahead and give a pain medicine prescription to this person. I can just imagine probably what some of those kind of corporate nurses were thinking on the other end of, oh, great, like she's caused this huge mess. But we didn't know. We didn't know it was a problem. You're not always educated to that. And so I think that whenever I learned that, and then I started at Axiom, and so then I understood the OSHA component, and then realized all of the many things that, it starts like this downward spiral of what becomes whenever you give out some of those unnecessary interventions, because then all of a sudden your rates going up, and you've got all these OSHA recordable events, then you can't bid on contracts, et cetera. So it was definitely a learning curve, but it was something that I knew immediately once I came on and I understood that piece, that it was like, I've got to tell somebody about this. Nobody knows about this. It's like, we got to shine a light on what's really going on and be able to say, hey, here's somebody that came from the other side. We know what's going on at that end. And so how is it that we can help them kind of navigate through those channels? So I did that, came to Axiom, started as nurse case manager. Then I actually became a nurse client liaison. And so that was where I worked directly with clients to get them implemented with the various services and products that we had. And then I actually moved over to the marketing team, and it has been nothing but a dream ever since.
I know when I started, the marketing team was pretty small, and now we're probably 4 or 5 times the size of that now.
Yeah.
What is it about marketing that you wanted to jump into that? Because for people that don't know the back end mechanisms of how this company works, I mean, Holly is just a born marketer, but also with that medical knowledge in the background, just kind of makes her just an amazing asset to have. So you talk to us about, what it is about marketing that appealed to you.
I think it really is just that I'd spoken about before, was that, if you have information, that's your job, is to share that and to make for sure that you can impact somebody down the line in the knowledge that you're given. So, to have that experience to bring the nurse piece of that. And then also, especially when you're looking at injury management, because that's really kind of the core. Obviously, we do a lot of different things with preventive medicine and some of the other products and services that we have, but a lot of that comes back to injuries. And so to have that baseline knowledge of, this is what needs to occur whenever you have an injury, not only to treat the employee appropriately and to aid in that recovery process, but also to be able to help the employer, and avoid some of those stumbling blocks that come along with not having that insider knowledge of how to navigate through the system and what makes sense, what doesn't. Whenever I explain some of the pitfalls that you fall into sometimes, especially when OSHA is involved, it's something as simple as like providing a prescription dose of an over-the-counter medication. That's a really big difference in what those outcomes are. Whenever you look at giving somebody first aid measures that's in a dose that's appropriate, that OSHA says is appropriate, versus saying, okay, we want to give you 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. All of a sudden you have a very different scenario. That whole situation outcome has changed. So I think just being able to share that knowledge and feel like that you're making a difference, and every day that you're making your mark on the world. That's what living the dream is all about.
Fantastic. Let's switch gears a little bit. So March 13th, 2020, that's when the company basically sent all of us home to work remotely. I had worked remotely for 5 years prior to coming here, so I had that built in to me being able to work remotely. But you've been working remotely for Axiom since the start. So do you have any tips and tricks for people that are currently struggling? We're over a year into working remotely, and some people love it. Some people are still getting used to it. Do you have any tips or tricks or advice for anyone?
I do. And, and before I tell you about the tips and tricks piece, I will say that that was one of the biggest factors that drew me to Axiom whenever I considered coming here, because, I'm a boy mom. I've got two boys and a husband. And so there is not a better gift than to be able to see your kids get off the school bus every day and be here whenever they come in. So I can't thank Axiom enough for giving me that opportunity to really take care of my family throughout these 10 years. I mean, it's a gift that nobody else could give, and it'll never be forgotten. So that's the first part. But the second piece is that I think that you have to accept that you don't always have all the answers here. It's like you have to be flexible. You have to find what works for you, and what works one day is not going to work the next. Some days that we have a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that have to get accomplished. So whenever I come here in my zone in my office, then I try to get up and take breaks, to have lunch and kind of maintain that routine schedule. But sometimes hours can get long, and so it's really understanding that you just have to know where your limits are. And I'll be the first one to say that, sometimes those can get pushed a little bit. You have to be your own advocate. And it's a process. And I will say that I work at it continuously, and I'm sure that everybody else does too.
Great. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about working remotely since then was we missed last year, for people that don't know about our office in the Woodlands. Holly every year would bring down 97,000 Christmas trees and decorate the office. And they were fantastic. And it wasn't just like basically you just put up a tree and you have a couple lights and that's it. I mean, these were professional quality Christmas trees. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, any hobbies that you have besides Christmas trees. And one of the hobbies that I know you have, it's a little bit different from other people's hobbies, is that you love to go on... I'm blanking here. Sorry.
Cruises.
Yeah, you love to go on cruises. So if you could talk about your love of cruises, if you want.
Yeah. So there's two numbers that you can always expect to get from me. I know on a daily basis. Most people would say that's probably like your kid's birthday. It's probably like your social security number, et cetera. Mine is how many days until I take my next cruise and how many days it is towards Christmas. So I'm like, at this point, actually, I'm 17 days and counting until I take my first cruise since the pandemic started. And I think I'm actually also I think it's like 164 days till Santa Claus comes. So I've always got those two numbers on and updated at all times. So, but yes, you are exactly correct. I love the Caribbean. I love everything about it. I love to be able to selfishly take my kids and my family and put them in one place and they can't get away from me. So that's the first piece. And so they have to spend time with mom and hang out with me. But then also I just like the slower pace. Obviously they've made technology improvements, et cetera, where, there's some, ability to use phones and internet, this, that, and the other. But I actually don't utilize that. I turn everything off. Obviously when I communicate with my family that's on the vacation with me, but I try to shut those down and really kind of step away and take a break and utilize that time to take care of my mind, take care of myself, and take care of my family.
Fantastic.
Everything about it, I love it. One of these days, maybe I'll get a place somewhere in the Caribbean. Then you and I'll just invite you down, and we can all just move the marketing team there.
Heck yeah, count me in.
Yeah. Umbrella and drinks for all, for sure. Yeah.
If Dara Wheeler, our chief marketing officer, or Mark Robinson, our chief executive officer and president, is watching, I fully back this idea. Let's move it to the Caribbean.
Yes, and. I just think we could come up with probably a good 10 list of why it is that we should make this happen. So, you know what? I'll start on that today, and we'll get those routed to all of you. Actually, everybody on the executive team. We'll send a copy to all.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you are a native Texan.
Uh-huh.
Is that correct? Have you lived anywhere else besides Texas, or anywhere else besides the United States?
I did. I'm born and raised Texas, and imagine that. I'm sure I have a sound in my voice where you picked up that. But actually, I did step away and take a break from Texas, actually to go to college. So my husband was in the Navy, and he was actually on submarines, and so he's in the nuclear program. So I actually went to school in the state of Georgia. That's where I got my nursing degree from, and so I was there. I guess I don't know, maybe about I guess it's maybe about 6 years that I was away from Texas. But as soon as he was done, I ran back just as fast as my little legs could get me, so that I could get back to my sisters, my brother, my family, and then we started having a family. So then I started having babies.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is pretty evident to anyone that knows Holly is her family comes first. Family is a big thing for you, and it shows. So let's go back to your career. You actually ran an ER department or two in your past, didn't you?
I have, yeah.
Maybe you could talk to us about how that prepared you for, things you're doing at Axiom.
It does, yeah. So, I think it helped that you start and you kind of make your way through the system. Per se, it almost sounds like we're processing people for prison as well. But you work your way through the system and understanding. I think it's really important to always understand what you're asking the people that work for you to do. It's not to say that you have to do every single thing that you've completed, every task that somebody else does, but it's important to have an understanding of what they're going through and sometimes some of the preparation work that goes on behind the scenes. So that really has been a big piece in what moved me in this direction. Obviously, the communication is huge. I'm sure you're really shocked, but I love to talk and I love to chat and I love to explain what's going on with me and hear what's going on with everybody else, and really just kind of have a good time with everything. It's like there's nothing worse. I can't imagine a worse scenario than just being kind of stuck and by yourself and unable to share your life with anybody. And so that's the biggest draw. The piece in terms of making decisions. I will say that the ER background kind of helps with some of these things. It's like, and for those of you that it probably sounds a little strange, but we are like the inventors of making things work. You're going to make something work no matter what it is that you have. We can convert a latex glove into a ponytail holder to put your hair up. We can, if you forgot a cup, it's no problem. We can find a urine basin. Those are what ER nurses do. And so I think that really has taken a lot to be able to move me in that direction of saying, okay, there's not just one way of doing things. There's always another way that you can go around that. And there's always a different solution if you just keep trying and you're not stuck and married to just one thing in life.
Great answer. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here shortly. Is there anything that, what does the future hold for Holly? What do you see along the horizons?
Are you kidding me? Like I'm ready to solve the world. And so I always say that if you run into the answer and you get told no, then we're asking the wrong person. So I tell them in orientation that I've never been told no at Axiom, and I really mean that. And that's not to say that we don't have any rules, because obviously you have to play by the rules sometimes. But I've never worked for an organization that has been more open to input and ideas than what we are here at Axiom. Everybody's opinion matters, and everybody's input is always considered. The amount of growth that we experienced this year, I always kind of go back to that we were this company before, and while most organizations really contracted whenever the pandemic occurred, I mean, that was just like our green light go. We just spread in every different direction. And I think that the magic to what it is that we do is having people on the team that are always thinking ahead of what's going on, that always dream bigger than probably what your budget ever, looks like at that point. And they say, there's more. We're not done. There's more.
True.
We're going to conquer more, and we're determined to make even bigger difference than what we did the prior year.
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We're extremely lucky to have you on our team. You bring an energy, heart, and empathy and sympathy every day. It's fantastic. So I wanted to start this episode series off with interviewing you, because you interview everyone else. Anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
I don't think so. I appreciate you letting me join. This is a great opportunity. This is great. sitting on the side of the screen. So we'll have to do this more often. Yeah, we'll come up with something else because this is fantastic. But I appreciate you, Jason. I appreciate our entire team. Obviously, I love who we are at Axiom, but I have to give in one more shot to our marketing team. I've never seen a team that's as cohesive and caring and nurturing as what our group is. And it's a really special thing. Not many people experience it. And so I consider myself fortunate and lucky every single day.
I concur. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a different guest, and have a great week.
All right. Bye, guys.